Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our series on my journeys through the United Kingdom and Europe. Today, we are going to a place I did not know much about. That is Wales. And just like in last time, it is very difficult to fly a plane from outside. I don't know how people do it in other games, so let's go ahead and get inside and enjoy it. We're, of course, in the NX Cub today. This is a great airplane for this. It's very, very powerful. It's very, very reliable. Seats two and is quite comfortable. And as much as I love that nice golden sunset, I can't see a thing when it goes there. So let's go ahead and make a quick little adjustment here. All right. So Wales. What can we say about Wales? Oh, boy. So first of all, Wales is not England. I know that's one of those things. It's like, well, obviously it's not England. But it's one of those things where, after having been to Ireland, after having been over to England, Dover, like I said, Canterbury and everything like that, this place definitely has its own unique personality to it. One of the things, of course, I was doing on the ship is I was reading away, books basically on castles and the Plantagenets and everything like that. Kind of get my background, just sort of understand how this all got together, kind of a thing like that. And of course, we had the Welsh, who are very, very, very independent, very, very capable, strong individuals. Who were protected by there it is, those mountains. Good old-fashioned Snowdonia there. And I actually thought somebody was playing a joke on me when they called it Snowdonia. Like, really? Is it like Freedonia kind of a thing like that? Again, ignorant American. I'm allowed to say stupid things like that. But of course, no, that's actually what it's called. And it was this incredibly large, basically mountain range. And you couldn't really get along very well. Basically, your supply lines would always be threatened if you tried to do anything silly, like basically try to force an army around it. And of course, at the time, you get good old-fashioned King Eddie there, doing the best he could, built a bunch of castles. And of course, I got to see those castles. That's kind of our trend, as you've probably observed on our journey so far. So what I have right now, and what I'm flying over right now, this is Holy Islands, basically at 12 o'clock here. Swing around this way a little bit. And this is where we put in support, kind of a thing like that. Very, very nice. Windy. It was, again, the weather had been a little bit better, as you probably noticed from the trend here. This is something I kind of get used to, is that whatever you think the weather forecast is it changes. I know a lot of people say, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. Like, that's just a universal sort of generic thing people like to say, like, you know what I mean? But here, that's like, it could do something. We can tell you maybe how warm it's going to be. And again, you've got that giant Atlantic Ocean that we're literally looking at right now off my basically 12 o'clock. And so much of that is going to dictate, and it makes things very unpredictable as far as weather goes. And it kind of gives you an idea. But my introduction, of course, to Wales, we basically put in right over here. That's why we're kind of flying in this general direction. Like I said, this is a holy island kind of a thing like that. And we started making our way sort of inland. Now, I was kind of used to the whole left side of the road thing at this point. I've seen my fair share of roundabouts and everything like that. And you can see our causeway basically right over our right. It's actually pretty cool here because of just the incredibly large tides they have. And we're going to get a nice shot of the tides. Well, not of the tides, but we're going to get a look at kind of how much they go up and down kind of a thing in a minute. But basically, we arrived here, Holyhead, which is, like I said, the first port. The other port we put into when we did Wales, which, of course, was Liverpool, which is just kind of north and east of us, sort of in that general direction. And you can see those pretty good-sized mountains. And there's no exaggeration. Those are pretty serious-looking mountains. And you can see here, I'm just kind of going into my pocket and grabbing some quick photographs. Just things, the quick snaps kind of a thing like that as I was kind of cruising around. Kind of another sort of a generic look of just sort of the whole environment. So again, you can get a good look at the cloud cover, which, like I said, one moment it'd be nasty and cloudy, and the other moment things would look absolutely fantastic. But like, you just cannot get over how large that mountain range is. And again, this whole land here is relatively flat. And one of the cool things is there's actually an Air Force base here. And one of the things they do is they have something called the mock loop up in the mountain. What they would do with NATO is they basically practice a very, very low-level flying over in that region. Realistically, I should be in a Buccaneer or Barracuda or something along those lines flying here. But like I said, it shows something a little more versatile and very hardy, very, very easy, and very good stuff. And that's, like I said, why I went for this one. So, of course, when we went to Wales, we got to journey along the countryside, which is kind of a general kind of theme with most items that we see. And our first real stop was at Beaumaris, which had the greatest castle never built, kind of a thing like that. And the neat little thing here is, again, I don't have a really good shot of that because I was more interested in doing stupid things like walking up basically to the little line here, kind of taking a picture. And again, you can see that cloud cover. And there's the caravans, just like I promised, kind of a thing like that. Is they had this really, really old castle there. And it So basically, it was never finished. This was one of the 3 castles that was built basically to keep the Welsh under control here. And this is the town itself. The picture you just saw a few moments ago, if I do one of these things and go like that, that would have been where it is. And you can actually see the ruins of the castle right over my left here. So one of the things I learned, of course, is, just like anywhere, sometimes you got to go to the bathroom. And some of these distances were pretty darn long that we had to journey. So, of course, we got the lovely public toilets. They did not charge for these, but unfortunately, it was a bit of a thing. If you look right there, right off my left, you can, you get the idea. You get the idea. I think you can kind of see where I'm going for this. But we spent a little bit of time in here. I was introduced to something called Wall's Ice Cream, which was pretty wild. But one of the other cool things, too, is, as I was mentioning, when we were in Ireland, the street signs are both in the local dialect of Gaelic as well as in English. So got some interesting things with that, but I want to kind of save that for the end, because I know the individual who was very curious to see if I could figure it out will find out just how bad I didn't figure it out. You'll know what I mean. But one of the wild things here is we have this lovely body of water, which basically cuts this island off from the rest of it, right at Bangor, kind of a thing like that. And they have tremendous tides here, like 30-foot tides. And we actually got to see the tide both up and down. And one of the crazy things is there's this really, really neat bridge. As a matter of fact, if I look directly over my nose here, you can see that really, really neat bridge, just like I promised, kind of a thing like that. Again, why did not take a picture of this besides me? I don't know why I wouldn't take a picture of something this cool. But basically, this old school Victorian arch bridge here. And then, of course, you have the new modern one. There used to be another bridge, basically the one that I'm looking at right now. But apparently, in the 70s, a bunch of teenagers burnt the bridge down. So they replaced it with a double-decker bridge, which is basically you have rail on the bottom and you have cars on the top, kind of a thing like that. But one of the most wild things about this, and again, we were driving along the coast here, going back to the narrow roads, as I mentioned in the earlier videos. Golly, these roads are very, very narrow. And again, we're kind of ripping along the sides and we always get landslides. And Roger Moore stayed in that house, like if you see that building right there, things like that. Yeah, the penthouse, apparently, kind of a thing. But, they'd be talking about it in the major tides. But one of the cool things with the tides is we're cruising along here, and if you look really carefully, I think we can see it right here. Yeah, this is the flight simulator version of it. There's a house in the middle of this entire area here. The crazy thing with this house is basically, apparently there was a fish market or something along those lines at the time. And when people would come in and out with their little boats or something and kind of drop off their catch or, buy their catch. But it's basically, I think it's like an Airbnb now. But I'm like, how would you get there? Kind of a thing like that. Like one of those classic, did they think this through properly? But again, you get a beautiful shot right there of that lovely Victorian bridge. You can't take the bus over that one. Some bad things would happen probably. But again, this little house is this little tiny white house. And you can kind of, if you use your imagination a little bit, you can get an idea of just, again, there's a little line where you can see where the tide basically goes up and down, and it's just incredible. But we crossed this, of course, and this is the only way to get in, on, or off the island. So if you cannot get on this bridge, you're in for bad time. And the crazy thing with this bridge is, when we get to Conwy, is they actually have a miniature model of this bridge. And it's just one of those kind of fun things that I get to see. But like I was mentioning earlier, cross the bridge, start making our way over in this general direction. Again, you have those massive mountains, and you can see from that picture earlier, just how, like I said, very, 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 very large mountains there. And I think they had tours. Like at one point, you could do like the cog rail or something like that. We didn't get to go on that one, which was kind of a shame, kind of a thing. But we're cruising along, kind of picking up the general information. We have this lovely, lovely A highway here, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But let's just say I got to experience some real traffic. But our first stop, of course, other than Beaumaris there, was this beautiful lake. No, it was the town of Conway. Now, me, of course, not knowing anything, would call it Conwy the entire time because the spelling is C-O-N-W-Y. And, of course, got that corrected pretty quick. It's Conway. Now, this was a neat town. And the wild thing is we spent 2 days in Wales. And, of course, if I put my nose down, we should be able to see it any second now. It's going to be right off my 12 o'clock here. But the cool thing about Conway is I actually spent 2 days in it. One day, of course, became just basically get dropped off, go have some tea, and that's exactly what we did. And, of course, the second day, hey, there's Conway Castle, is we actually got to take time in Conway Castle. Now, looking at Conway Castle from the outside is the equivalent of looking at the back door. And we're missing the inside of the castle itself. Now, it's really, really cool because there's this actual city wall that goes all the way around the town, and we're probably not going to see it in flights in here. I'll do the best I can to kind of show it off. Get a little bit of altitude here and see if you can see it. You can, if you use your imagination, it's there kind of thing. Oh, there's the church, just downtown. Oh, there's the castle, Castle Conway. And of course, there's that little tiny house, but we'll get to that. There's this right there. You can get a pretty good look at it. See that bridge, by the way? Remember I mentioned earlier there was a bridge we passed? It's going to be a bridge that we passed. There it is. But crossing through, of course, there's this really, really neat city wall that runs around the outside of it. And I, of course, I'm an idiot tourist. I'll go climb up on the wall, and I got to take some, dramatic artsy-fartsy pictures, kind of a thing, to kind of get a feel for it. And of course, here's another shot, kind of a thing of actual Conway Castle. And again, like I said, it's like looking at the back door because you're kind of missing the real magic that was on the inside of this thing. And of course, what was the magic that was inside of this thing? And the magic that was inside of this thing was the fact that this lovely castle had these really, really cool turrets that looked a little bit like this. And again, you can kind of see it off my left here. And I, being stupid, went climbing up one of these turrets. You can see it looks like an AI oopsie here, but that's what it looks like inside of here. So I'm like, hey, this floor is pretty cool. So, you go up another floor. There's a really, really good shot of that bridge that I was mentioning. It was almost like a prototype for the one we saw earlier, which was really, really cool. And I, of course, stupidly just kept going up the staircase. And next thing you know, this is my view. And again, you can see this is what it looks like from up top, looking over kind of the bay here. And so I have a long-running inside joke about elevators. And, I always have bad dreams about being on really sketchy elevators. I must have been killed by an elevator in a past life or something like that. I don't know what it is. Honestly, it's, when you're a kid, you play a lot of games, and they have a lot of elevators that are sketchy, they break or something. I have no fear of elevators. But there were stairs inside of this castle, a Conway castle here, which were designed for defense. So I love spiral staircases. They're the greatest things ever. So what they would do is they'd have a spiral staircase that would take you all the way up to the top of the castle turret. Now, this spiral staircase, of course, was turning to the right, if you're going up, kind of a thing like that, clockwise, if you will. And the reason they did that, of course, is defense. It's easier to defend downwards than it is upwards, and I've slowed us down a little bit. What they don't tell you is how tiny these stairs are. And I'm doing the best I can not to relive the terror that I experienced here. But you're going up this staircase, and there's no handrail. And you're taking a right, you're taking a right, you're taking a right. There's a little rope in the middle, and you're supposed to grab the rope if you need it, kind of a thing like that. And, of course, the wind is blowing really, really hard that day. So, you're climbing this long stairway. It is sketchy AF. That is the safest way to say that, kind of a thing like that. And again, you can take a picture of kind of what looks like up top, kind of thing like that. And I'm making my way up this thing, and I'm shaking, the building's shaking because of the wind and everything like that. I'm like, I don't do well with heights. Of course, I'm a pilot, go figure. But it's a different kind of heights, I swear. So people start coming down the other way. Now, here's the picture. I'm going up this thing that has no outer handrail, and people are coming down the inside where there's barely any step, but there's a piece of rope. So what do? You take your body and you flatten it up against the wall of the castle, which, by the way, is still shaking because of everything else, everybody walking on it, plus the wind and things like that. So you're hugging it, basically going, kind of a thing like that, waiting for people to pass. So, of course, you get to the top of this thing, and you get rewarded with this beautiful view, and people in the other turret looking back at you, and you're like, kind of a thing like that, and I'm dying here. So then, I can't let go of the handrail, and I'm, crouching over, and I'm just I don't have agoraphobia, but, I have a little trouble with heights. And it's just dying is the best way to describe it. So I did that, and of course my wife's like, I'm not doing that. She was smart. I got tricked by the tour guide. A very, very cool tour guide, by the way. He was ex-military. He had some really fun stories about why we drive on the other side of the road, kind of a thing like that. So did Conwy Castle, absolutely gorgeous. But there was something else I got to see in the town of Conway, other than having a delicious katsu curry. Oh, by the way, we've got another picture of the inside of this castle. Again, it's neat. I mean, all the wood is gone, all the floors are gone, but it's a pretty darn cool castle. You got to do all the artsy-fartsy shots, too. It's just required, kind of a thing like that. Oh, here we go. How's that for artsy-fartsy? But one of the wild things here, and I'll come sneak around the outside. Hang on just a second. I got to find a picture of it real quick. Trying to fly and drive at the same time is never a good combination. But one of the things we saw, of course, was this. That is apparently the world's smallest house. And where I'm looking down in the flight sim right now, it would be right here, basically. And for £1.50, you can take a look inside of this house, which was like a 6x9. It's a tiny little room. I'm like, did you see the cabin we had in the cheap section? But it's right there. And of course, they don't show it to us or anything like that. But basically, as you saw in the picture, there was a big line of people, and they'd pay their £1.50, and they'd stick their head in there. It's just a little curtain here. That's all they were doing for it. And they look at this little teeny tiny house. And there's one more thing, of course, in Conway, which was really, really cool. And that was the fact that because there's a city wall going around it, you basically had to drive the bus, all the way through the very, very, very tight medieval entrance. Now, I have no picture of this because I was dumb and didn't take a picture of it that I should have. But let's just say there was about an inch of clearance on either side of the mirrors, and apparently buses would lose mirrors on it all the freaking time because of just how stupid tight it is. Again, you can see that city wall there right on the right. So Conway was a really neat town. I got introduced to, like I said, it was a katsu fries, which I thought was really good. It was different. I was like, that's kind of nice. I like that. But of course, our journey in Wales was not complete yet. And like I said, we spent 2 days there. The second day, of course, we went out of Liverpool. We got treated to something a little different. So we headed into the countryside, Snowdonia, basically. We didn't do any of the high wires courses. That was one of those things. We were not given that offer, but apparently they have zip lines in on these mountains. The one thing I can't show you clearly here as we're kind of ripping along is just how the weather came back. And again, it was sunny, as you saw earlier, and things just kind of got gray. And like I said, I'll take a quick little picture of something that looks, you can actually see the mountain range, and everything got very rainy and very nasty again, but that's just part of the fun. But the next place we stopped in Wales was Betws-y-Coed, which I'm probably pronouncing horribly, kind of a thing. But the best way to describe it was like a cool little, almost like a Colorado mountain town, is kind of the way I would kind of describe it. And we're coming up on that in a second. Now, this region here feels so much like home, it's not even funny. When I think of like where I live and like the mountain ranges and things about where I am, this is exactly what I see. If you take a look there, you can kind of see right off the right there, there's a kind of Betws-y-Coed there. And it has this really neat little rail museum with like a little miniature train and everything. One of the cool things is it has this really, really neat bridge and this neat little like rock formations where like the water kind of all kind of dropped down there like that. And we just thought it was like, the coolest thing. We got to eat at like a little hotel there, and the hotel, I think it was Hotel Waterloo was the one. And it was chicken again. I just thought that was funny because that was just like our entire journey, chicken, which not a bad thing. But basically, this is a pure hiking resort town. You got to imagine ripping through the woods, and all of a sudden there's like just this little town, just like you saw in the pictures there, all those old buildings once again. All this kind of concentrated in here, and that's this little region here. Very teeny tiny road, and of course, lots of wool and wall ice cream again, which people from the UK are like, what do you mean? Is there something special about that? No, what was special is when we found Ben & Jerry's ice cream, because again, Ben & Jerry's is kind of a regional thing for us. It's Vermont, which isn't too far from where I live. And like I said, that's like our special premium ice cream, if you want to think about it. And of course, we went through. You had to get your ice cream. I visit the trains. You take a look at that. And again, there's that little downtown. The bridge is actually right there. You can actually see that is their take on the same bridge I showed you a picture of a few moments ago. I'm kind of skid. That bridge is so much more narrow than you see in this little image here from a flight sim. But that's okay. And like I said, it's very cool. Great little hiking trails in this whole region. It was just so neat to see like another part of it. Along the journey, of course, when we were heading out this way, we learned about the Jones thing. Now, I'm saying that humorously, like obviously people from this region know what I'm referring to about the Jones thing. So for those of you who are not in the know, or you've been following along, like, hey, this is interesting. I'm going to visit these places now. You should, by the way. Travel broadens the mind every time, doesn't matter who you are. But one of the things is, of course, is you got this. A lot of people have the last name Jones. So one of the things is, of course, you get the opportunity to, like when you say, I need to talk to Mr. Jones, and they'd be like, which Jones are you referring to? And it's like, there's more than one Jones? Yes, there is. And, of course, it's not unusual to reference Tom Jones, wink, wink, but also Welsh. But the fun thing there is they told us, the classic joke. I could see the punchline coming, but it's perfectly fine. The German spy lands. He's supposed to meet some special codes. He goes up to the first person in Wales. Hey, I'm looking for Jones. Oh, what Jones do you need? You need Jones, the school teacher, Jones, the carpenter, Jones, whatever. And the guy goes, I don't know. And of course, he gives him the secret phrase that they were supposed to use. Mine's a nice day outside or something along those lines. So of course, our Welsh farmer goes, oh, you need Jones the spy. That kind of a thing. So it's just sort of an ongoing joke. But of course, we got that whole experience. Now, one thing we're not going to fly over, because I'm kind of heading this way now, because we're going to be heading to the kind of our last stop in Wales when we're there, is that we stopped by this small town. And of course, they said, oh, you got to see this. This is one of those things that, like, if you go to Wales, you kind of have to do it, kind of a thing like that. One of the parts that I really enjoyed was, I had to check it out. And let me show you the picture, and I'll let you decide what's going on here. That's me, by the way, on the left. Yes. So the story with this town is they wanted to be more than basically a drive your train through a town. So they had a very clever idea, and they said, well, if we change the name, we can change it to something that is so long people can't not visit it because they want to come take a picture. There's me with a picture with the sign. I don't know how many millions of people have taken a picture with the sign. Again, there's the train sign and everything like that. And this, of course, is Welsh. And the challenge there was, our tour guide says, if you could figure out how to pronounce it by the time, we're done, I'll buy you an ice cream. That was basically the challenge to, 45 people to see if you could figure it out, kind of a thing like that. Llanfair, Pool, Gwil, Gil, Go, Gar, Ook, Wyn, Drob, Ulan, Sil, Sil, E, U, Go, Go, Gok. Landed it. So what I learned here, of course, is the double L is a TH. I'm not good at it, but I wanted ice cream. So again, that's how we earn our ice cream. So kind of a thing like that. Of course, at that point, I couldn't eat, cruise ships are. But we stopped by this little gift shop there, and of course, we got a little a little lamb thing with like wooden legs and everything that we got from it. And again, another thing that blows my mind is, like I mentioned when we were in Ireland, is the fact you could just get alcohol like anywhere. Like, what? It's just not what I'm used to. And like, they just had like the little, you could get this whiskey or get this beer or something like that. And I was just blown away by that. And again, it's kind of the ongoing kind of a joke there, sort of a thing like that. But the final place, of course, that we got to visit while we're cruising around here, of course, was Liverpool. And of course, when people think of Liverpool, of course, they think, hey, ho, ho, hey, look at that. They think of the Beatles. And, I couldn't imagine coming here without, humming a Day Trip or something like that. But, not that I want to get lynched or anything like that, but Beatles are okay. Like, I like them. I have several of their albums, but it's not one of those things like, oh my God, Liverpool, Beatles, let's do it. For me, it was, like I said, we went over down to Conway again. And yes, there are that many windmills in the water there. And it's kind of a cool thing like that. That we got to kind of see this place. And I'll go ahead and steal this. But you get a nice kind of sort of sideways view of just sort of the whole little region here and kind of the port and everything. You could actually see the buildings we just went ripping by a few minutes ago. Those were actually the same buildings right there. But Liverpool was really, really cool because, like I said, it was a classic place. Everybody was very, very, very excited to show it. We were actually parked right there, if you want to kind of think of it sort of another way. That's why, like my standard thing to do is basically to, get out of bed, go get my coffee, and run upstairs and take whatever pictures of whatever port we happen to be in that day, kind of a thing like that. But as I mentioned, Liverpool was kind of a starting point for us. This is kind of the other direction, if you want to kind of see it. Like I said, just sort of a thing like that. You can tell I like to run upstairs and do my pictures. Oh, look. You can see where low frame rates were created over the water. But like I said, that was wild to actually be able to see that thing. And of course, our journey in Wales could not be complete here if we didn't land at the appropriate airports. And that, of course, is Liverpool John Lennon Airport. Yes, their airport proper is named after John Lennon, which I thought was neat. And I got to ride in the tunnel. And again, they don't love bridges here. It's just a general UK thing. They don't do bridges. They love tunnels. And I'm fine with tunnels because, again, it doesn't ruin the skyline or anything along those lines. But we had a common opportunity to kind of check that out. So as I mentioned, Wales, very, very neat place. The people were great. Once I could start to kind of figure out what the letters meant, like it wasn't as scary. Like I said, if you just kind of break things down, it's not bad. Double L just means it's the letter Th. Whenever you would see a double F, it just means F. When you see a regular F, it's almost more of a V. And you just kind of get the hang of it, kind of a thing like that. And it's just kind of fun by, our end of our 2-day time there. We kind of got a little bit better. And one of the things I can't believe is I've actually used enough fuel that I have to do this. The plane is starting to fly a bit of a skid here as we're kind of cruising around. But again, a wonderful area. Like I said, it was a little busier. Now, the final story I'll leave you with Wales as we kind of come swinging in here directly is we were coming back. I want to say the A55. I'm probably wrong. Again, I did not memorize every road we took or anything like that. But because, like I said, different culture as far as cars and where you could put roads and stuff, it was kind of the only way to go kind of a thing. And, of course, there was a smash-up where a Scania truck basically bumped somebody and then jumped the divider and then bumped everybody on that. It was really bad. I really hope everybody was okay. We actually saw the helicopter leaving. But it stopped traffic. Like, just stop. Game over. And again, there's no like, oh, I'm going to get off the off-ramp at the next exit and just go that way. You can't do that. It just was not an option where we were. So we're sitting in traffic. It was 2.5 hours, by the way, if you were curious how long it took before we could like kind of sneak off. They basically kept redirecting and then they shut down. They wouldn't let anybody through. So there was no traffic coming the other way. It was bad. And I really hope everybody's okay from it. But one of the things that happened is we're sitting on the bus. I have my cell phone out. So I'm reading about English kings, basically. Just kind of getting some understanding of the region and the history of this because I want to have some idea what's going on. But all of a sudden, I hear something about bathroom, and the bus driver's yelling, and I'm like, "What's that about?" Kind of a thing. And then the bus the door on the right side of the bus, the coach, opened up, and this woman and her young daughter comes in and says, "Can we use your bathroom?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" So, of course, we said, yeah, and we helped her get the door open and everything like that. And she kind of helps her little daughter. Again, young daughter. We're talking probably 5, 6 years old, kind of a thing like that. So she goes to the bathroom, and, like, we're trying to make small talk. And, like, because the kid, of course, is terrified. Because, like, who are these strangers? Where am I? Why am I going to the bathroom on this? There's bad traffic. What's going on? So we're, like, making small talk. It's like, what are you guys with? Oh, we're with the cruise ship. And she's like, yeah, we're just on my way home from, like, work or, like, something like that. And it was just like the most incredible thing that we could help this person out. And like you were saying, thank you for coming by and all that. And of course, we're cracking like the typical kind of jokes, like, the little daughters that want to go to the bathroom. So we're like, oh, performance anxiety, it's okay. One of those kinds of things. So we're having a little bit of fun on, of course, the poor kids' expense. But they did eventually go to the bathroom in case you're curious. And when that all got sorted out, of course, we were hours late getting back to the boat. And the boat will not leave without us unless there's a fantastic reason to do so, which us being late was not a fantastic reason. I later found out that we had to burn something like an extra like $8,000 worth of fuel or something to get to our next port on time. It was ridiculous. But so anyway, so we held up the ship. So they basically have to go find somebody to let us back on the boat when we got there. It was pretty funny. And we get back on the boat, they like rip up the gangway, and they're gone. And it's just one of those kind of funny things that, like I said, I always remember that coming back. But that was a really, really cool trip. And like I said, we were doing everything we could to go fast, but you can't go fast because, like I said, you've got the speed cameras, and you'll get nipped real quick if you try to be shenanigans with that. So unfortunately, like I said, we held up the boat hours late, like I said, even though we did that. But that was pretty cool. And like I said, Wales is neat. Our great souvenir from Wales, by the way, was a dragon. We have the Welsh dragon. And it's pretty neat because we call him Welshy, and like he's just sitting up on our shelf with a Nessie, of course, because when we went to Scotland, you can't not get a Nessie. I'm just saying, kind of thing like that. But it was a really, really neat region, and again, comparing it to like it was much more built up, which was a little different. Like I said, especially coming from Ireland, which is just like house, and then hours later maybe saw another house. That wasn't that. I'm exaggerating. But in Wales, it was built up. There's a lot of people places. There's some big buildings, a little bit of industry. Man, this place is packed with stuff. John Lennon, like I said, international here. But it was just wild. And like being able to see the history of Conwy Castle, Beaumaris. So we need to see the other one, Betws-y-Coed. I love to come back here and do some hiking. It's just really neat. The food, like I said, get a lot of it. We got some chicken and, like I said, curry fries, which was like really good. But like I said, it was pretty neat. It was pretty neat. And like I said, all these adventures, as you can tell by the way I'm explaining them, it was just great. Like I said, being able to see this was not any bad thing other than when it would rain, just because it felt like raining for 10 minutes. And of course, so we got ourselves a nice little London umbrella because we bought it for like, 15 pounds, which was way too much for an umbrella. But we had it in case we needed it, and it was pretty wild. But other than that, that's our Wales. Unfortunately, our final video of the series is next time, and that's going to be Scotland. Thank you for kind of coming along on the journey with me. Scotland was different, and we'll have a different plane for that one as well, and all the cool things that we saw then as well. Enjoy.